I am a baseball fan. I love baseball. They seem like such simple skills. You imagine that anyone could do it, when in fact, these are incredibly difficult skills and abilities. In order to hit it, you have about approximately 1/10 of a second. If you haven't made a decision about whether you're going to hit it or not in 1/10 of a second, forget it. You are not going to hit it. So a baseball player is going to make that decision not just about anything, but actually about the flight and trajectory of something not necessarily straight. Now, in order to hit it, the baseball player has to initiate the movement of the bat, and the bat has to hit the ball with a very, very small margin of error. Now, how do you learn this ability? You learn it through thousands and thousands and thousands of practice tries, in which you're making these judgments about the flight of the ball in these few tens of milliseconds. And you're determining basically how the ball is arcing and moving towards you so that you can make that incredibly fast judgment. You can only do that through a massive period of practice because you have to strike it almost perfectly.
I think one of the main things that's really being found nowadays is that experience is driving and really is what separates the top players from the rest of us. All of these guys have these amazing physiques, they have the biomechanics, they have corrected vision, yet you still see variability across these athletes. And our belief is that these demands that are a little bit harder to measure and things that maybe we aren't recognizing as much, which are occurring in the brain, is happening in this kind of hand-eye coordination networks. And the more honed they are, the better these players are.
Developing the incredible skill required to make split-second decisions and act upon them requires tremendous attention.
When you're at bat, what are you thinking about? Usually for me, it's the task at hand. You know, what's the situation when I walk up to the plate? So I try to leave everything else in the on-deck circle. The more you focus on one thing, the less you notice everything else. You know, if you're focused on what you need to do, you don't hear the guy in the third row yelling at you. In a way, it does block everything else because you give your mind something specific to focus on.
Once you enter the batter's box, it's just you and the pitcher. I don't play against anyone else while I'm hitting. So when I'm hitting, it's just me and the pitcher, so no one else matters.
I do think that attention is really at the core of skill acquisition because the brain has to be in a state to really learn. Now, the brain is a success-driven machine. So if you imagine for a baseball player, if they fail, their brain is going to reweight things and try to adjust. And this is where the plasticity comes into it because it's constantly trying to adjust and say, how do I adapt so that the next time I face that situation, I'm going to be able to succeed? And each one of these situations is really a plasticity driving situation. So the role that attention really plays in specifically developing these skills is really the ability for the player to first focus in on what's most relevant to them, be able to suppress the irrelevant information, which is a hugely important thing, but then also to focus in on not only the things while the pitch is occurring, but even things that are happening before, looking for small little cues. In all of these situations, these players have thousands of different things that could be occurring, right? Tons of different pitches could be coming at them. And what they have to do is use whatever information they can to filter it down, and you're either going to commit and swing or you're not going to commit. Attention is so incredibly important in that because you really have to focus in on what's relevant and really shut down almost like a spotlight.
The really great experts are the people that work harder, 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 harder. That's sort of the elbow grease to the whole thing. There's no way around that.
The more you practice the right way or specifically, the more likely you are to execute those things. So, you know, as a player, as a hitter, as a fielder, whatever it may be, you have to practice the finer points to be able to execute them more often.
Developing visual motor skill requires solving a lot of problems and linking vision with action, and the ability to sort of make that not only more accurate, but also more rapidly deployed. And then actually it becomes very automatic. So this sort of transition from cognitive to very automatic is sort of at the basis of acquiring a skill. And really the main way to do that is through practice and actually putting yourselves in these situations to learn. The football coach Vince Lombardi once said that practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. And that's really getting at the sense that not all practice is created equal, and especially at the brain level, you really have to focus on almost the ability to anticipate the unexpected, which is really difficult, and the only way to do that is through extended hours of practice.
Development of expertise also leans heavily on memory.
think of memories as these almost very explicit and declarative memories. But there's also other forms of memories which are more implicit and often called procedural memories. And that's what actual skill is. It is a memory.
It takes about 1/3 of a second for a fast ball to travel from the pitcher to the catcher. The batter has to make a decision about swinging in about 1/40th of a second. If the batter swings 1,000th of a second too soon or too late, he hits a foul.
Players bring to bear a lot of information about past experience as they're preparing for on-field action. So when a player is stepping up to the plate, he's not stepping up as a blank slate. He's drawing upon a lot of knowledge about previous situations, the current pitcher, what the current context is, things like the count, what the score is, what type of hit he's trying to get. And that allows him to use this sort of past experience to form predictions, which actually allow players to be able to sort of anticipate things, and therefore within that really short window of time they're able to act, to actually have sort of an edge in being able to increase their level of success.
Accomplishing that requires intense amounts of motivation as well.
I mean, my motivating factor is just I love the game of baseball. I think it's the hardest sport out there.
It's a lot more fun to be successful, so that's why you practice. And it's one of those self-feeding cycles. The more you're successful, the more you're going to keep it up.
Interacting with a lot of players, it was really blown away by how hard they actually work and how dedicated they are to the actual skill development. And obviously, this has been a lifelong goal for them. And motivation is really key to develop any skill, but it's very, very important at the brain level because motivation leads to engagement, and the engaged brain is a learning brain. And if you don't have that sort of critical engagement with what you're doing, you're not setting the stage for the brain to be very plastic and to pick up the skills.
Another important facet of peak performance is the concept of use it or lose it. Continual practice of gradually increasing difficulty is necessary to drive positive plastic changes in the brain.
This game here is a game about timing totally. A matter of inches, timing, all of that play a part. Of a pitcher throwing 95 miles an hour and you haven't seen that and that's your first at bat. It takes some time to adjust in your eyes and everything getting back. If you're going 2-3 years and trying to play, first your defense gets away from you.
Any athletic skill actually really generalized to skills that we employ every day. So maybe on the global level, being able to kind of sustain your attention, really focus on the task at hand. You get better at that as you put yourself in that situation. Neuroscience literature is hugely focused on kind of how we can train these things, but most importantly, how they will change your life is that you're gonna be more attentive, you're gonna be able to react faster and better in situations of uncertainty, and these are incredibly important in everyday life.
The brain is always asking us to take up new challenges, to engage with the world around us in a consequential and meaningful way. That desire motivates plasticity forward and spurs people to develop incredible levels of expertise that we've seen. Next, we'll meet ordinary people who've become extraordinary explorers, changing their brains by participating in a worldwide treasure hunt that keeps them mentally and physically active, socially connected, and on the path to an invigorated life when Brain Fitness, peak performance, returns.